All right, so the last time we figured out how to space these guys evenly across the screen. We did that in our prepare in world here. So, but what we wanted to do was maybe was start these guys a little farther in, give ourselves a margin. So, like if we look at the game over here, you can see there's a lot of room on each side, so that they're closer together and that's kind of the look we want to go for. We're going to get these closer in. So what can we do? Well, oh, and the other thing is, you know, they're kind of, these guys are a lot smaller, aren't they? They're closely packed together, but they're, I don't know, we might need to resize our images too. But for now, let's just play with getting these guys closer together. So we have our 11 aliens, and right now the way we're spacing them is we're going from 0 and we're ending up at 640, right? Because when I equals 10, I times 64 is 640. So the last alien is placed at 640. So really what we want to do is go from maybe, instead of going from 0 to 640, if we went 100 in, we would start at 100, and if we ended, you know, 100 back, we would be at 540, right? So we really want to go like maybe from 100 to 540, something like that. So let's think about this for a second. So the entire row length, okay, so let's think of this as we want a row length of, let's say, of like, I don't know, like 500. So static final int row length of 500. So if we want them, you know, and we can change this, we can play around with it, but let's say we want them to go 500 across instead of 640. So let's start with that. So this 64, the way we got 64, we knew there were 10 spaces altogether for the 11 aliens. So we just divided 640 by 10, and that gave us, you know, how much to change the spacing each time. So if we want a row length of 500, or whatever our row length is, we can just take that row length and divide it by 10, right? So if we say row length divided by 10 and multiply that by I each time, we're going to space things out. So if the row length is 500, then I will start out at 0, and then it'll be 50, and then 100, and so on. So we'll get a shorter row. So we have a shorter row, but now we want to move this row in, right? So that it's starting. So we have this maybe centered a little bit, right? So let's see then. So how would we do that? Well, we could just, if we added the same amount to every single, to the x for every single guy, then we'd move them over by that amount. So if we added 20 to every single guy, then they're over by 20. Or if we added 40, and then moved over by that much. So we could play around with those numbers and kind of try to figure out. But really what we're doing, if you think about it, is we're getting this row length of 500 and we're centering it on the width. So it really, the way to figure it out would be if we take 640 minus 500, that gives us 140. So the difference between the width of the screen and the row length is 140. So if we, so basically this space over on this side and this space on this side needs to add up to 140, right? So if we put this in the center, if we split that 140 equally on this side and on this side, so if we put 70 over here and 70, we would have 70 over here, right? So let's see, so that should work. So let's try 70. So if I make that, if I add 70 to every guy here, then yeah, that looks pretty centered, right? So, but now let's think, because we might want to change the row length or change the width at some point. So let's think exactly where that 70 came from. So what we did was we subtracted the width minus the row length, right, to tell us, okay, we needed 140. So we said width minus the row length, and then we divided that value by 2 so that we could come up with, so we could divide that space, that leftover space, between the left side and the right side. Okay, so what we're doing then is we're taking the width, subtracting off the row length, and then dividing that difference by 2. That's how we got this 70. So let's say then width minus row length, and if I want to divide this difference by 2, I need to use parentheses to make sure I do the subtraction first, and then I do the division, divided by 2. And then division comes before addition, and also that since this appears first, it's like, we know that this division is going to happen before we add. So I think we're okay now. Let's see. Yeah, so that seems fine. And then if we decided to change the spacing or the width of the world or everything or anything, then this would all be still working. Okay, so so now we have a more general way of setting up our spacing for our aliens, and next let's figure out how to shoot these guys.